The Nintendo Game Boy Color originally released in 1998, and it's a really special game device to me personally because it's the first one that I ever had. I remember I was given one as a kid. I had a green Game Boy Color with a handful of games and a really cool carry case with it as well. So I had Donkey Kong Country, Super Mario Bros. Deluxe, Mario Tennis, and then a Mortal Kombat Game Boy game for the thing. So that was really cool. So I did just pick this up, and I was really happy to kind of jump back into Game Boy Color as it's got a lot more games that I'm interested in checking out. So the device itself has this really nice D-pad. It's not too squishy, but it's got enough click to it. And you've got your B and A buttons as well as select and start on the front here. On the bottom, you've got your headphone jack as well as your power in. And then on the top, you have this wireless communication thing, which I think they used for Pokemon games, but I'm not entirely sure what else beyond that. And on the side here, just like the Game Boy Pocket, it's got a port right here that you can use for the link cable, but also for different things like the worm light. And then you have the volume slider here. And on the back, you've of course got the cartridge slot as well as the battery tray right there. Takes 2 AA batteries. And on the other side here is your power switch. And the Game Boy Color itself is pretty comparable in size to the Game Boy Pocket. The biggest difference being really the size of the screen here on the Game Boy Pocket is a little bit larger than the Game Boy Color. But in terms of feel and everything, this is really comfortable. The edges are nice and rounded. I mean, the only thing is that, of course, being a vertical handheld, it's going to be a little bit cramped in the back, but it's really not too bad. And just like earlier Game Boy models, this still wasn't backlit, but of course, as I mentioned before, you can get the worm light, which plugs into the side there, and then when you turn it on, the light turns on as well, and you're able to kind of angle it so there's less of a glare. And this is definitely something that's very helpful to have if you're in a situation where you don't have a lot of light in the room. So some people kind of group the Game Boy Color in with the original Game Boy, but I'd argue that it was the next generation of gaming handhelds. In fact, it had its own library of games here that were specifically made for the Game Boy Color that would not work on original Game Boy systems. In fact, something like The Legend of Zelda Oracle of Seasons here, if I turn on my Game Boy Pocket, it starts up normally, but you get to this screen that locks it out and you're not able to play it on the system. And the Game Boy Color library is one reason that I was really excited to pick this up again, as I feel like there's just tons more games for me to discover on this thing. Now, while I did say that Game Boy Color games were not playable on the original Game Boy, there were still some released under the Game Boy Color branding that were compatible. So stuff like Pokemon Silver here, while released as and marketed as a Game Boy Color game, it is still playable on the Game Boy Pocket. In fact, I had been playing it a lot on the Game Boy Pocket before I picked up my Game Boy Color here. So this one is perfectly playable, starts up just fine. But I'm definitely pretty excited to look more into the Game Boy Color library of games, as I'm definitely more familiar with the original Game Boy library. So it'll be really cool to find new Game Boy Color games that I didn't know about before. So if you know of any great Game Boy Color games, please let me know. So even though the screen isn't backlit, I will say it does look really good when you have enough light to be able to see it. So taking a look at one of my favorite Game Boy Color games here, and it's The Legend of Zelda Oracle of Seasons. This is definitely a great one to play on the handheld. Just a great classic overhead Legend of Zelda game, and these are always fun to check out. I mean, as I mentioned before, I've been playing Pokemon Silver on this thing, so you definitely have tons of Pokemon games that are playable here. Of course, you have Red, Blue, Silver, Gold, as well as Pokemon Crystal. So just tons of great ones to be able to experience here, and I've been having a blast playing through this one, not only in my Game Boy Pocket, but as well as the Game Boy Color here. The Game Boy Color is also an excellent way to play your original Game Boy games, as not only does it play them super well, but it also does add some color to these games. Now, not a ton, and it really just depends on what game you're playing as to how much color it adds. But if we take a look here at Wario Land, there is some color added here and there. So let's go ahead and jump into one of the levels here. in the games, so it does add some yellow to Wario himself, but then there is some different colors in the levels. And again, it just really depends on the game that you're playing as to how much color it adds, but still, definitely an awesome way to play these games, as they look great and they play great here on the Game Boy Color. So I'm personally really happy to have picked up a Game Boy Color this year. I'm definitely looking forward to diving more into the library of games for this thing, but is it worth getting one in 2026? Now, for me, absolutely. I'm super excited about this, and I've got to say, it's got an amazing library of games. Not only do you have the Game Boy Color library, but you also have backwards compatibility with original Game Boy games. So there are just tons of great games to discover on this thing. But of course, if you're looking to play an even wider library of Game Boy games, the Game Boy Advance may be more for you. But if you're looking for an option to play original Game Boy games, this is definitely one that I would point you in the direction of, as this is just a very solid handheld. I think the Game Boy Color is definitely one of my personal favorite handhelds, and especially now having picked one up again, I'm really excited about this thing. So thank you so much for watching this review of the Game Boy Color, and I'll catch you in my next video.